So I don't think I've ever seen a company as indirectly admit failure as Nvidia did at their presentation recently, where they so blatantly drifted around the fact that, well, Turing cards weren't the best value.
Every couple of generations, the stars align, as it did with Pascal, and we get a giant generational leap. Pascal was known as the perfect 10. Pascal was a huge success and set a very high bar. It took the superfamily of Turing to meaningfully exceed Pascal on game performances without ray tracing.
So of course that leads to the obvious question of, was Turing a failure? And that is kind of a complicated question, because even though, yes, in many ways those cards failed, they still ended up top in the end, in a very weird twist. But let's just go over it, shall we? Firstly, even Nvidia themselves admitted that the sales of RTX cards weren't the best, and there were many reasons for that, mainly the price, and also the fact that RTX was more of a gimmick at the time. And sure, tools like RTX Voice and all are cool, but they're definitely not worth getting in RTX cards over. There simply weren't enough ray tracing games, and in those games the ray tracing performance wasn't good enough for that RTX factor to be even worth it, and to this day, Nvidia still struggles trying to get developers to have ray tracing in their games. Granted, we are getting to the point where you can pretty much expect all new AAA game releases, so let's be honest, the only games people actually care about. Sorry, indie games, I know that some of you are good, but let's be honest, most people don't care. But yeah, now you can expect most upcoming AAA games to have ray tracing, which is great. Though for most people until very recently, it still seemed like an absolute luxury and pretty much the equivalent of having marble pillars outside your house, because having an RTX card, and more specifically a good one like an RTX 2080 Ti that actually will be able to have good FPS in ray tracing, well, that was just a pure luxury. And however, because of the amazing price of the RTX 3000 cards, that trend is kind of going away.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nvidia's new Ampere GPU, our second generation RTX, 28 billion transistors built on Samsung 8N Nvidia custom process. All three processors double rates over Turing, a triple double. It connects to Micron's new G6X, the fastest memories ever made. The days of just relying on transistor performance scaling is over.
And let's talk on 2080 Ti, shall we? Because that was probably one of the biggest mixed bags of the entire generation. Because yes, it was an amazing performing card, but also its price made it very hard for many people to justify, coming in at around $1,200, almost twice the price of the previous flagship, the 1080 Ti. And yeah, the 1080 Ti was also a big deal, and a big reason why these cards did so bad, because the performance of the 1080 Ti, for its relatively low price at the time of around what, $800, yeah, that was a big deal, and the performance was absolutely amazing. And compared to the 2080 Ti, well, sure, you got RTX, which you couldn't even use for most games, but you didn't even get any kind of VRAM increase. It was still just the same 11 gigabytes. And Nvidia have said themselves several times in their presentation that Pascal is just really good, and the fact that all of the hype around Turing at the start made people just want to sell the old graphics cards, sell the old 1080 Ti's. So all of a sudden you had eBay flooded with cheap used 1080 Ti's that people got to buy to get even more performance for a low price. In fact, for a while, that's what I considered doing myself. Instead of, getting a Turing card, just getting a used 1080 Ti and running them in SLI. But that plan was quickly thwarted when I realized that my motherboard doesn't even support SLI, so yeah. Well, I'm not stoked here at all, let's continue. So with all of that combined, the relatively high prices for the relatively low increase in performance, RTX being gimmicky, and even increases in VRAM being, non-existent, so all of that resulted in Turing just kind of, dying prematurely. Kind of like the real Turing now that I think about it. That was a very morbid joke, I'm so sorry. And like Jensen once said in the presentation, it took for the 2060 Super, 2070 Super, and 2080 Super to actually make, RTX performance not be as bad. But by then, the damage was done. And with the release of the RX 5700 XT by AMD, well, they're getting that much closer to just being completely demolished that generation. But they still came out on top, mainly because AMD had pretty much nothing to offer people instead. So people who need that kind of performance still went with Nvidia, even if the prices and the overall performance gain wasn't the best. So Nvidia pretty much won the generation without even doing much because of AMD just not offering any good alternatives at the high end. In the low end, it's a bit of a different story, and you can clearly see that there Nvidia was a bit more desperate with Turing, because there you had the RTX 2000 series smaller brother, the GTX 16 series, also based on Turing. There they had way more competition, and AMD had a lot of really good options, so you can really see how they panicked and messed a lot of things up for themselves, making an absolute nightmare for the customers to navigate the web of products Nvidia created between the Super variants and the TI variants and the 50s and the 60s. It was an absolute mess. Not to mention that many people were confused by the existence of this series in the first place, because, you know, they had RTX cards with, you know, RTX, and with all of those good AMD products in between those Nvidia cards, well, it was just a right old mess in that area. So hopefully that's something that Nvidia will be able to improve with Ampere, because seeing how good of the performance they can get on the high end, I can't wait to see how affordable they can make performance on the lower end. So overall, yes, Turing was a bit of a failure, but Nvidia still managed to retain the crown throughout the generation, simply because there was just no response from AMD to be seen. And the failures were one of the reasons why they, you know, done everything they can to make RTX 2000 appealing again. With huge increase of performance, without huge increase in prices, it is a absolute match made in heaven, and I believe that Ampere will be even bigger than Pascal. So we can, you know, just wait and see, but let's be honest, Nvidia's back to good old selves, and we have some amazing, amazing products on the way.
Ampere is a giant leap in performance. Ampere does 2 shader calculations per clock versus 1 on Turing, 30 shader teraflops compared to 11. Ampere doubles ray triangle intersection throughput. Ampere's RT core delivers 58 RT teraflops compared to Turing's 34. And Ampere's new Tensor Core automatically identifies and removes less important DNA weights. And the new Tensor Core hardware processes the sparse network at twice the rate of Turing. 238 tensor flops compared to 89.
And speaking of amazing products, if you want to buy any of them, literally anything, on Amazon, then I recommend checking out our Amazon links down in the video description below, and hey, I'll probably also put them down in the comments below. Down in the video description, you'll still find a link to my Patreon if you're, you know, kind enough to donate even $1 a month. It really goes a long way in helping out my channel. Down there, you'll find a link to my Discord if you want to talk to me about this or whatever else, really. And I guess that's really it. And don't worry, I have some non-RTX 3000 videos coming really soon, including a very, very special 2,000 subscriber special, so definitely stay tuned for that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this content video. If you didn't subscribe, and I'll see you all when I'm next. Goodbye everyone, goodbye.